Hi, today I'm going to share with you one of the most interesting products that I had a chance to review here in the last couple of months. This is the Vello Nikon F mount to Sony E-mount autofocus adapter, and I'm going to tell you exactly why this is such an exciting product. So let's take a look. Today we shall be taking a look at our first adapter that enables Nikon F mount lenses to be mounted on Sony E-mount bodies and transfer autofocus, stabilization and EXIF data. These types of adapters have been around for some time for Canon glass, but for Nikon it proved to be more of a challenge, and this is the first adapter to do this successfully, at least in part, as we will see in this review. Starting with the build quality, the Vello adapter is generally well built and made from hard plastic with metal front and back mounts. The adapter itself has no optical elements inside it. It is purely mechanical and electronical adapter, which is a good thing in this case as it will not degrade your image quality in any way. The adapter is quite thick at 2.5 centimeters or about 1 inch, which is apparently needed to gain back the necessary distance from the sensor. Yes, your DSLR camera has a large flange distance. It also has a foot with a 1/4 inch 20 thread where you can mount an RC2 plate. Just keep in mind that you won't be able to mount an RC2 plate on your camera as well comfortably. The only part which might be improved upon is the lens detach lock, which is just a tad too plasticky for us, but from our experience it does seem to work fine. Before we take a closer look at the adapter's performance, we need to match our expectations about what it can and can't do. We are looking at the B&H webpage for this adapter, which seems to be pretty up to date, and we're talking about the Vello LAE-SE-NF V4 auto lens adapter with firmware version 4. If you have something else, this might not apply. Right off the bat, we have some important limitations that apply to all the lenses that they have tested and that appear in the table they made. All lenses were tested in AF-S setting with center point focusing. No AF-C was tested. We actually did test AF-C, but it didn't seem to work very well and we didn't want to damage our lenses anyway. The second point that Vello mentions is that autofocus function was tested for photo. Video will not work properly, and we can actually attest to that. Beyond that, you can see if you look closely at the Vello table that there are certain lenses that work very slowly with autofocus and other lenses like all the Nikon lenses that do not work at all. These are just some of the limitations that you need to accept if you're considering this adapter. Now let's see what we got when we used it. Now that we have a basic understanding of some of the limitations of the adapter, let's look at its performance. We shot 2 targets at a distance of 1 meter or 3 feet and 2.5 meter or 8 feet in terms of autofocus speed, hunting, autofocus accuracy, image stabilization, as well as the existence of EXIF information. We'll start with Nikon glass and we will begin with the Nikon 105mm f2.8 macro lens. We are going to give these lenses score based on our subjective testing. On our test, the Nikon got an autofocus speed of 3 out of 5, when 5 being the autofocus speed on a fast focusing Nikon camera like the D7500. For hunting, we gave the lens a score of 2 out of 5 with lots of hunting, especially in close-up shots. For autofocus accuracy, this lens got 5 out of 5. When you nail the focus, images are as sharp as this lens gets. As for EXIF information, it was registered and you can see it on the computer. The second lens that we've tested is the Nikon 35mm DX f1.8 lens. For autofocus speed, we gave it 4 out of 5. It's relatively good, although this lens isn't very fast to focus with Nikon cameras as well. We gave it 4 out of 5 for hunting, as there seems to be very little hunting, especially in good lighting conditions. Finally, accuracy, where it got 4 out of 5 as well, as it seems good, although the closer target was not 100% sharp, but this might just be the lens or some sort of a glitch. This lens has no image stabilization and the EXIF seems to work fine. The third Nikon lens that we have tested is the Nikon 70-300mm f4.5 to 5.6. There is a newer version of this lens that we are going to test later this year, but this is the version that we tested here. We were up for a disappointment with this lens as autofocus didn't seem to work at all. On the Vello lens compatibility table, this lens is not even mentioned. EXIF information was written to the file though, and you can use this lens manually if you like. The next lens on our list is the Nikon 18-105 f3.5 to 5.6 kit lens. For autofocus we gave it 2 out of 5 as the autofocus speed is pretty bad. This is an older kit lens and the autofocus motor doesn't seem to work very well with this adapter. Interestingly, Vello's lens compatibility table marked this lens as working fine with their adapter. This has not been our experience. We gave it 1 out of 5 for hunting. There was a lot of hunting with this lens, and 0 out of 5 for accuracy as it really struggled and wasn't able to really get the focus. It was hard to measure image stabilization under these conditions, but EXIF data was transferred to the files. We can only hope that the newer 18-140mm kit lens from Nikon works better on this adapter. The last Nikon autofocus lens that we have tested is the AFP DX 10-20mm f4.5 to 5.6 lens. This 2017 lens got 4 out of 5 for autofocus speed, which seems okay, much better closer to 20mm. At 10mm it can be a bit hard to focus on smaller, more distant targets. You don't have this problem with Nikon cameras though. We also gave it 4 out of 5 for hunting. There was very little hunting if at all, mostly on 10mm. Autofocus accuracy was not perfect, we gave it 3 out of 5. Focusing on smaller target can be a bit problematic, especially at 10mm, but even at 20mm, focusing did miss a few times. Moving away from Nikon and onto third-party lenses, we tested the Sigma 10-20mm f4.5 to 5.6. This is the older version. In terms of autofocus speed, this was the best performing lens that we have tested. We gave it 5 out of 5. The focus was very close to the speed that we have tested on Nikon cameras. In terms of hunting, we also gave it 5 out of 5. We encountered almost no hunting, in good lighting conditions at least, even at 10mm. In terms of autofocus accuracy, we gave it 4 out of 5. Focus seems good, although again focusing on smaller target could be a bit problematic, especially at 10mm, but results are better than the Nikon 10-20mm. This lens has no image stabilization, but EXIF did register on the files. The second third-party autofocus lens that we have tested is the new Sigma 100-400mm f5 to f6.3 lens. In terms of autofocus speed, we gave it 4 out of 5, also a good performer, although focusing speed is slower than on Nikon bodies. In terms of hunting, we gave it 3 out of 5. We encountered quite a bit of hunting at 400mm on smaller or more distant targets, but less so at 300mm or below. In terms of autofocus accuracy, we gave it 5 out of 5. Focus seems perfect when the lens is focused and images are nice and crisp, thanks to the good optical characteristics of this lens. Full review, as we said, coming soon. Image stabilization seems to work fine and EXIF was registered. Now, although this is an autofocus adapter, we decided to try to test 2 manual focus f-mount lenses that we happen to have just to see what will happen. The first of these manual lenses is the Nikon 50mm f1.8 Series E. This is the later silver version. We found out quickly enough that you simply can't change the aperture. Not from the camera and not from the lens. Trying to change the aperture from this lens resulted in almost no difference in exposure, so from our experience this lens will not work with this adapter. Just use a mechanical adapter for this lens. The second manual focus lens that we have tested is the DZ Optics Curly 35mm f1.2. This is a much newer design. In this case, we still can change the aperture from the camera and there is no EXIF information on the files, but you can change the aperture from the lens and it seems to work perfectly fine. So we can make this lens work for us just as well and with a zoom and focus peaking on the camera better than on a Nikon camera. Before we conclude, a quick remark on usage with this adapter. On occasion, we ran into a situation where the camera didn't seem to respond to working with this adapter. We simply got a black screen. This was frightening at first, but it seems to happen on occasion where you switch lenses with this adapter. We turned the camera off and on, and if we needed to remove the battery and wait for a few seconds, we did that and put it back in. From our experience, everything gets back to normal after this. We do hope, however, that Vello will fix this glitch in the future. So let's conclude this review. The Vello adapter is a very unique product on the market, enabling autofocus with a relatively large number of f-mount lenses, and although it has its limitations and does not work with every lens as we have seen, it can still be pretty functional, and to us at least it still seems a little bit like magic. If you're considering buying this adapter, we highly recommend that you check out photographer Brian Smith's written review of the Vello adapter. He tested quite a few lenses that we didn't, and we tested a few lenses that he didn't, so these reviews are complementary in this sense, and see if your lens works with this adapter and how well it does. In terms of pricing, the Vello adapter isn't cheap. At $400, this is certainly a significant expense. The way we see this, if you understand the limitations of this adapter, set your expectations accordingly, and use the right gear, this can actually be a very useful tool, especially for still shooters who have high quality Nikon glass they want to use with their Sony E-mount cameras. If you have all autofocus Nikon lenses, manual focus Nikon lenses, or you're just more into video shooting, there are other, possibly less expensive options that might not give you autofocus, but at least in some cases, such as the Novaflex Nikon to Sony adapter for example, will give you aperture control from the adapter itself. So this was our look at the Vello autofocus Nikon to Sony E-mount adapter. You can read the full review on LensVid.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you next time.